have in common. So I'm going to factor out an x to the second power. Okay, this one does not have a y. This one does. This one does. Since this one does not have a y, I cannot factor it out, right? Because it has to, if you factor something out, it has to go into each term. Okay, now I'm going to look at my z variable. Z to the fifth, z to the first. This one does not have a z, so I cannot factor out the z. This is the only thing that all three terms have in common. So I put my parentheses in. 12x squared. Okay, I want to make my first term, so I'm going to stick in an x, and I'm going to stick in a z to the fifth. If I multiply these two together, 12x squared times x z to the fifth, I will get 12x to the third z to the fifth. Here's my next term. 12 times 6 will give me 72. I've got x to the second. I want to make x to the fifth, so I need to put x to the third in here. Okay, I need a y squared, so I put that in. I also need a z. I put that in. Okay, I have just made my second term. Okay, my last term is a negative 60, so I need to put a negative 5 for my number. Okay, I already have x squared, so I don't need to add anything here because my x squared is already factored out, but there is a y, so I add that to this term, and let's check it. 12x squared times negative 5y. 12 times negative 5 is negative 60. X squared times y will give us x squared y. Right, so this one has been factored. Okay, let's look at 4 more. Look at your coefficients. They each have a 5 in common. My leading term is positive, so that makes it easier. So I'm going to factor out a 5. This last term does not have a variable, so that means I cannot factor out any of the variables. So put my parentheses in. 5 times 3 gives me 15. And add the a squared plus b squared to get the first term. 5 times negative 2 will give me the negative 10. I need to add the a and the b to get my second term. All right, 8th grade. You must put the 1 in here, 5 times 1 to give you the 5, okay? Don't just drop it or stick a 0 in there because that's not going to work. Because if you put a 0 in here, then 5 times 0 is 0. That does not match the 5. So make sure you put your 1 in here to get your third term. If there's 3 terms in the question, all right, you're going to have 3 terms in your parentheses to match. Okay, looking at this one, we have no coefficients, all right, so there are no numbers to pull out. So we are looking at the variables. We've got x squared, x to the first, and x. Okay, they each have one x in common. Z, z squared, z. They each have one z variable in common. Draw your parentheses. xz times what gives us our first term? We put an x in there. This will make x squared z. xz times what gives us our second term? We need another z. xz times z gives us xz squared. Okay, xz times what gives us a negative xz? We need the negative 1 to get our third term, which needs to be turned into a negative. Okay, let's look at our last two. They have coefficients. Okay, this one, our leading term is negative. All right, we want to make it positive in the parentheses, so I'm going to pull out a negative 11. This is n to the third n squared. So they each have an n squared in common. Do your parentheses. Negative 11n squared times what gives us our first term? We need another n. Negative 11n squared times what gives us a negative 22n squared. If we put in a positive 2, that will give us negative 22n squared. All right, here's the last one. Look at your coefficients first. 10, 25, negative 5. They each have a 5. Our leading term is positive, so we don't have to worry about it. We're just going to pull out a 5. Now look at your variables. Start with the a. A to the third, a to the second, a to the second. They each have an a to the second in common. Look at your b variable. B to the third, b to the third, b. They each have one b in common. Okay, let's do our parentheses. This times what gives me 10a to the third, b to the third. I need to put a 2 in. I need to add an a. And I need to add a b squared. All right, this will make 10 a to the third, b to the third, our first term. Let's go to the second one. 5 times 5 will give me 25. Okay, I already have my a squared out here, so I don't need to add an a, but I need to make b to the third, so I need to add a b squared. When I multiply these two together, I get 25 a squared b to the third. Okay, our last term is negative, so I need to stick a negative 1 in here. Okay, the a squared is already there. The b is already there. So to make the last term, all I need to do is add the negative 1. Right? Once again, use distributive property to see if you get the third term. All right, so 8th grade. I want you to try these. All right, I'm just going to give you a few of these to try on your own. All right, I'll see if I can find a video that's out there on YouTube that's already been created to kind of go over this for Wednesday. All right, so based on what your answers are like, it will determine how quickly we go from doing these problems into something a little more complicated. Right? Try your best. Remember, write neatly on your paper, circle your final answer, all right, and send me a picture. I'll talk to you later.